Hello, and welcome to a mini episode of Garden to Table with Rose, and I am Rose. Well, it has been a long time. I did not keep up with filming the garden regularly this season. I got preoccupied with all of the chores I needed to do and barely kept up with those. But as you can see, the garden is going dormant. It is the getting towards the end of October, shortly before Halloween here, and it's cold here now in Zone 6A, Kalamazoo, Michigan. I think right now it is about 40 degrees, and it's 11 a.m. somewhere in there. I'm out here because there are a few tasks I still need to wrap up before I'm done with the season. I need to harvest my potatoes, which I have not done yet. And so I want to do that before they freeze. And so that is what I'm out here to do today. And I may try to film a portion of that. It's always fun harvesting potatoes because it's kind of like a treasure hunt. You know, they're buried and you never know what you're going to get, how many you're going to get. I tend to plant all my potatoes in containers these days because it's just easier to harvest them for me. And plus, I don't have a lot of ground space anyways, so it works out. But anyway, these 3 pots are potatoes. And then I think I have just one big container here that's full of potatoes. And so I am going to harvest those. What I tend to do is just dump the whole pot out on the turf, get the potatoes out, and then take the dirt and dump it in the garden somewhere. And that's the end of that. So let me set my tripod down and turn the camera around, and we'll see what I get today. All right, so here we are. This is the finished harvest. Now I had 4 pots, 3 that were like 22 inches, somewhere in there, around at the top, and then 1 that was like a watering trowel from Tractor Supply that was probably twice as big as that. So, and this is what I got. This basket is almost full, and I don't know how many pounds this is. This is heavy. Actually, this is probably about 20 pounds. So I'm not complaining. I'm always pleased with whatever harvest I get, because I grow most of the things I grow just as a hobby, really, not for production. Obviously, if I was growing for production, I would have planted potatoes in the ground, because the harvest would be a lot more plentiful than in pots. And I will say I'm negligent when it comes to fertilizing and things like that, so I don't actually fertilize my pots, probably, other than when I plant. I don't fertilize at all. So this is a good amount of potatoes. Now what I do is I have to let them sit somewhere cool and dry. So I'll either sit these in the shed or in the garage or in the basement for a week or so and let them cure, meaning the skin gets a little bit tougher so they're not as easily bruised or scratched. I'm going to hose them off before I take them in. And then the tiny ones I save for planting for next year, like obviously something like this. I'll save these, I'll put them in a paper bag and put them in the fridge and save them until next summer, and I'll plant them out and get some more potatoes. So it works out. That's a lot of potatoes for just one person. And I'm sure I will get through all of them before they start to go bad. I'm thinking potatoes probably last me maybe 3 months, 3 or 4 months storage, just in my basement. Fairly cool basement. Yeah. So that's it for potatoes. That was the last thing I needed to harvest this season, thank goodness, because I am tired of gardening. I'm ready to wrap it up. So the only thing I have left to do is cut things, some couple of things back. Actually, I've cut almost everything back. I just need to haul off all the cuttings and stuff. I take all that stuff to the local transfer station to dump it in the yard waste area. I've planted over in this area hundreds and hundreds of daffodil bulbs and irises that will be coming up in the spring. As I have said many times, I'm transitioning this whole garden to all perennials, things that will return on their own every year. For me, the gladiolas, I got some gladiolas still blooming back there, as cold as it is. But for me, they've returned so far each year. They're not supposed to in my zone, but they have. So I've planted some more of those back here. I planted a bunch of hydrangeas that I got on clearance or markdown back here, because hydrangeas is one of my top 5 cut flowers. So I love hydrangeas. But basically now, everything back here is perennials, be they flowering shrubs, flowers, and fruit bushes, lots of those, tons of peonies in here, tons of berries along the fence line. This is all blueberries and raspberries over there in the grape arbors, which I still have not stained. I need to stain those posts. I don't know if I'll get to that this season, but those are all blackberries. I think I got a marionberry and a boysenberry in there. And then the back row, it's more blueberries, all blueberries. So pretty much everything is planted. In the long front of this short little fence line, those are all tulips going all the way down to the shed. So I have a ton of tulips and daffodils that come up every year, as well as alliums. So those get me through the spring, and then the peonies come in. I have lots of hellebores, which is probably the only thing that blooms around here in the winter. Around the holidays, I usually can cut some hellebores. Lots of hydrangeas, which I cut throughout the summer and fall. And the only annuals I'll probably be planting at this point will be my sunflowers and zinnias, which I plant every year. Yeah. and I might throw in 1 or 2 annuals if I happen to have some seeds or something. But like I said, the goal here is to make this garden be self-generating and then my job hopefully will be pretty simple. It will consist of weeding, fertilizing, and spraying for pests. That is the goal back here. That's the goal in the front yard as well. Matter of fact, that is just the goal because it's a lot of work. Even though it's a residential garden, it is a ton of work to maintain. Just the garden chores and the fact that there are so many different things that I have growing here, from fruit trees to berry bushes to produce to flowers to shrubs. There's so much that in each class of things takes a whole sequence of care on its own. So just trying to keep track of all of that is quite a job. So I'm glad about this transition that I'm making. Let's see, all of these things are cut back. A lot of this that you still see here is mint. I have several different kinds of mint, so that stays because that comes back every year. And the big raised beds have been cleaned out. There's nothing in those. I'm trying to think anything else. The only thing I probably will do back here is another sequence of weeding, just to try to make my job easier come spring. And then I might put down some prune as well before winter hits, because that just really helps. I would have liked to spray my trees. Over there's my little mini orchard. I would have liked to spray all of those trees before winter, but I'm not sure that I'll be able to do that because it's kind of cold here now, and it needs to be consistently above like 45 for these sprays that I use, the horticultural oil and the fungicide. And so I don't know that I'll get to another spraying before next season. But the backyard is wrapped up. The front yard is pretty much wrapped up. There's a couple of minor things I need to do in the front. The one thing I didn't get to that I really wanted to do this season was make my little brick walkway, which I was just going to take these bricks and make a little walkway here from my garage door, which probably wouldn't take me longer than a day. So I don't know. It depends on how many sunny, relatively warm days we have before snow comes, if I get to that, or if that has to wait until spring. And then I still have to put away my fountains and then some of my little yard decorations. I put those in the shed usually for the winter, but that's minor. So that is all. I'm keeping my bird feeders full, and man, the birds are in my yard. They empty these things out. I have 2 of these smaller ones, one there, and then try not to spin too far. I got one way over there, and then right on the deck I have another little one that's attached to the rail, and it has a camera on it, which is pretty cool, so I can see the birds and all of that. Yeah, but the birds have been here like crazy. I'm sure they're waiting for me to get out of the yard so they can come back, but they empty out those things within a week. And I'm pretty sure it's birds and not squirrels, because I have squirrel proofed everything. I've put wire fencing and chicken wire and all of that around the post to try to keep the squirrels from climbing up there and emptying out the bird feeders, which is what they will do. So that is all that's going on. It's been it was a good season. It was a physically tough season, for sure, but I am feeling confident, as I say every year. I know I'm really feeling confident because of this transition I've made, and now that I have all the perennials planted, there's nothing else for me to plant. I don't have any more space. Everything is planted that's going to be planted for the most part, unless something dies and I have to replace it. So now, there's a little bird right at the feeder as I was speaking. But now that I have everything planted, that really lightens the burden of stuff I have to do come next season. So I am hoping it's a much more leisure season next year, where I can just kind of enjoy the garden, enjoy being in it and sitting in it, as opposed to having a list and hours worth of work to do every day, like it's a part-time job. So we shall see. But that's all I got to say until next season. Bye bye.